Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Bond of Love interview series. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Her Grace Karunapurnasakti Devidasi, who is a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Welcome to
Hare
the Bond of
Krishna.
Love interview series. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Sorry, please
Glory
accept.
to Prabhupada. With your kind permission, I would like to read a little bit about Her Grace Karunapurnasakti Devidasi,
Be fine.
who joined ISKCON in 1975 and was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1976. For the first 5 years, her primary service was distributing Prabhupada's books. Later, she helped establish New Goloka Temple in Hillsborough, North Carolina, where she cared for the cows, gardened, and even built a log cabin from trees she cut from the temple grounds. After struggling with health for years, she decided to move out of the temple and sought help and professional counseling, after which she enrolled in college. She has a Bachelor of Science in Geography and Master of Arts in Applied Geography. She retired after 28 years of government service, which she last worked in a county planning department as both the floodplain manager and a spatial analyst. She currently volunteers with the Red Cross disaster team and is on the county board of health. She has a certificate of completion in the art of caring for Vaishnavas through Vaishnava Care. In addition, she has completed introductory coursework offered by Karuna Care on grief, taming your mind, and trauma. She desires to use her life experience to assist devotees as a compassionate and non judgmental listener. I love reading your bio. I've read it a couple of times already and so inspirational. Uh, I can't wait to hear from you. So, with your kind permission, I'd like to ask you, what about Srila Prabhupada convinced you that you should dedicate your life to him, even now, after all these years?
How much time do you have?
Well, our show can go for an hour at max. So,
I
we
first met Srila Prabhupada's disciples when I was 13 or 14 at the Chicago airport. And this would have been around 1970 or 1971. I saw a group of men and women approaching people and talking with them, and I really had no idea what they were doing. Their dress looked really strange and exotic to me, and my mother and I thought they were from another country. Well, after watching for a while, I got up the courage to approach one of the ladies, and there was just something very, very special about them. I mean, in a world where people are running back and forth and rushing to get God knows where, they looked really peaceful and content. I mean, they actually looked happy. Well, I found out, basically that they were distributing Love of God and Srila Prabhupada's books. And if I gave them a donation, I could have a book. So I went to my mother and she gave me $1. And I gave it to the lady, and she gave me a book called The Nectar of Devotion by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And that book would change the entire direction of my life.
Mm.
There are a lot of things in the book that I didn't understand. I mean, I didn't have the context, and it was filled with a lot of Sanskrit terms and references to books that I'd never heard of. But there was something really, really special about it. And for the first time in my life, I felt that I was being exposed to a spiritual science and actually got answers to my questions that made sense. Answers that resonated with me. Something I inherently knew was that the teachings in Prabhupada's books applied to everyone, no matter what faith they professed. I grew up in a Roman Catholic church. And heaven in catechism classes, or what they call heaven is what we refer to as the spiritual sky. And that heaven was this nebulous place in the clouds. And the kingdom of God there was just no context for it. I mean, I actually thought when I went up in an airplane and the airplane went through the clouds that I'd be able to see heaven. I mean, I was sort of like, well, I don't see it. Where is it? But if you look in our literature, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the kingdom of God, the spiritual sky, even this material world is described in great depth. God, was no longer a man with a beard, but was a youth. He was a cowherd boy that we called Krishna, who spent his day playing with his friends, the cowherd boys and girls. This is something I found really attractive. I learned that there are many names for God based on our relationship with him, and that all living creatures contain a soul. I learned about karma and reincarnation, or the transmigration of the soul, and that this wasn't our only chance to get it right, but God gave us chance after chance, as many as we needed to understand that we're going to be happiest when we're serving God, when we put him at the center. Prabhupada gave us a spiritual science that's based on love, and karma is a gift, giving us lessons for our personal growth.
Wow.
We're given a chance to learn. I mentioned earlier I was brought up in the Roman Catholic faith, and often felt that the priests and the nuns used fear to gain adherence to the church's teachings. So many religions are based on fear, the threat of hell, telling you only have this one chance. And if you get it wrong, you're going to burn in hell forever. That just didn't resonate with me. The answers I got to my questions in catechism classes, they weren't satisfying at all. The idea of sitting in a cloud playing a harp wasn't attractive to me at all. And in our catechism books, that's where the angels were. They were sitting in the clouds playing their harps. Also the concept that only humans had souls. It didn't make any sense to me. So coming into contact with Prabhupada and his translation of the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and all the extensive purports that he wrote, they had answers to my questions, and answers that resonated with me. The knowledge found in Prabhupada's books are what brought me to him. And to be honest, those same books and the association of devotees are what keeps me here. The more I read and discuss Srila Prabhupada's books, the closer I feel to him. And now, in this day and time, this digital age, we not only have access to his books, but to his lectures, recordings of his morning walks, and the thousands of letters that he wrote. They all help to solidify my faith, and help me to realize just how compassionate he is, and that compassion extends to me and anyone who will accept it, even today, years after his death. So it's really the association of devotees, having access to the association of devotees and Srila Prabhupada's books. It's both what brought me here and is what keeps me here.
Okay. Thank you. When you spoke about as through the lens of love, it was a very refreshing way of looking at it, rather than like a mechanical concept, that we hear about, as you so shall you reap. But you spoke about it as if it's a chance for us to, get better at this.
It really is. We shouldn't think of it as, it's a punishment. That karma is a punishment. It actually is an act of love. It's like Krishna's giving us so many chances to learn. And I think about, if you have a child, let's say I have a child and I don't want him to run across the street. So I'll tell him, please don't run across the street. I don't want you to get hit by a car. Okay. And darn if he doesn't do it anyway, just runs across the street, And so, okay. Well, now I'm going to, say, hey, look, you're outside and you're playing and you see, I tell you, look, I don't want you to run across the street. I'm afraid you're going to hit by a car. You aren't listening to me. And then a few days later, you see your friend run across the street and get hit by a car. Okay. And it's like, God, hopefully you'll listen now. Hopefully now you'll understand. You saw what could happen. Okay. Well, I'm still not going to listen. I still think I can just run across the street. Okay. And so I have to experience that. And that's like, hopefully after experience, I didn't learn from listening. I didn't learn from seeing it happen to someone else. And hopefully now I'll learn by experiencing it happening to me. Okay. And it's not that God is cruel. He just wants us to learn. And he's giving us so many opportunities and so many different ways to learn. And I think the one thing that he really wants us to learn is that true happiness is in our relationship with him. And in this material world, everything is so temporary. we're attached to these bodies, but these bodies are going to go away. And then what? And if you believe that this life isn't the all in all, believe me or not, I'm getting old. I'm going to be 68 years old. And inside, I still feel young.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look in the mirror and I say, who's that old lady staring back at me? It's really hard. And I know at this point in my life, I'm closer to death than I am to anything else. My life's not starting. It's not that I have my whole life in front of me. I'm getting closer and closer to death, And there's still so many things that I'm attached to, beyond Krishna consciousness. I'm not pure. I still have I'm attached to my family. I'm attached to the life that I've built here.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know that I'm going to have to give it all up. So I just keep chanting Hare Krishna, and I have faith that whatever little service I performed, that in my next life I'll continue from there, and that one day I'll be able to go back home, back to Godhead.
Thank you for your speaking in such a touching and authentic way. You mentioned that two things. One is Srila Prabhupada's books and Association of Devotees brought you in and has kept you here. I was wondering if you could share any specific ways that Srila Prabhupada engaged you in Krishna service.
Yeah. When I first came to the temple, predominantly I was engaged in book distribution. Mm-hmm. I started off at Marari Sevak in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. But there was no place for me to stay. And I spent a week sleeping in my little tent. And then they put me in a van with the milk, and we drove to the Atlanta temple. And I stayed there for several years. And when I was in the Atlanta temple, I was primarily engaged in book distribution at the Atlanta airport. Book distribution was hard for me. I had a hard time going up to people and talking. Okay. And even though I could do it, even though I wasn't that bad at it, it was a real struggle. I didn't have a knack for it. Later on, I got a chance. Bir Krishna Maharaj was going to start a little farming community in Sebring, Florida. And there I got to do some gardening. He had brought a horse to the farm, and he wanted me to train it for him to ride. I had never trained a horse in my life. I've ridden them for years, but I've never trained one. And thank God this one had already come pretty much trained. But the horse was pretty spirited, and Maharaj had no experience riding horses at all. So the first time he got on the horse took off with him. And next thing I knew, he comes walking back without the horse. And he says, Karuna Mataji, he says, you trained this horse so that only you could ride it. But years later, that farming, there was already a farm in Gainesville, so this one was sort of redundant, and for whatever reason, it didn't. We didn't stay there. It ended up being sold. And I went to the Miami temple, and again there I was engaged in book distribution, except at the Miami airport. And Bir Krishna Maharaj, but let's skip that. We went to celebrate Rath Yatra at Potomac, Maryland. Okay. And on the way back in the car to Miami, the engine, we had a head gasket. The head gasket on the car, it blew up. So we were sitting on the side of the road and couldn't go anywhere. And the car broke down in North Carolina.
Oh, so okay.
There was a devotee living in a town not far from where we were, who we could stay with for a few days. And Maharaj made arrangements for everyone to go back to Miami except for me. And he wanted me to stay in North Carolina and find land to build a temple that would later on become New Goloka. So here I am, by myself in a strange place where I know nobody, in my sari, no car, and I'm supposed to find land. So sometimes you just have to put your faith in Krishna that he will provide what's needed. And I made phone calls to several realtors and actually found one who would send me descriptions of properties, would call me with a list of properties that she thought we might be interested in, take me to look at them, and then bring me back to Creedmoor where the house was. And after I had a few, 4 or 5 that looked promising, I was able to call Bir Krishna Maharaj, and he and a brahmachari came to North Carolina, and we all went and we looked at the various properties and finally settled on the one in Hillsborough. And there I was engaged in clearing the land. We had to clear the land so that you could drive onto the property. The whole property was wooded. So Maharaj says, I'm the queen of I'm a queen with a chainsaw. So, I mean, I have to admire Bir Krishna Maharaj because he really believes in engaging people according to their tendencies. You think most women cooking and cleaning and taking care of children, and more, things of that nature, which I'm not geared towards at all. But you put me outside, and I'm happy. And so I really thank him for giving me that opportunity. But while I was there, I also built the first greenhouse on the property and the shelter for the first cow and calf. Devayani, I think the cow's name was Devaki. And she had a little bull calf we called Gopal. And then I, on the back part of the property, I got a book from the library on how to build a log cabin. Okay. And just cut down a bunch of poplar trees and squared them off and built the log cabin that's there even today. It was Bir Krishna Maharaj used that as his first residence on the property.
Wow.
Yeah. So so it's, if you go to Hillsborough, you can still see it. It's still there, So now my service is a little different. I live about 2 hours away from the Hillsborough temple. I still consider that my home temple, the one in Hillsborough. But here I have a garden on our property, and I've got a big sign in front saying Krishna's Garden. So when people drive down the road, they can see Krishna's garden. And, I love growing the vegetables and the flowers, to offer to the Panchatattva, and Srila Prabhupada. I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy the most is just, I do it now as more of a hobby than anything. My background is as a geographer, and I'm very proficient in using GIS software. Okay. So I want to use that ability to create I want to call it a storybook map, because it's a digital map that actually tells a story. And what it's going to be is year by year, the temples that were created and where Srila Prabhupada traveled. And then there'll be links to some of his lectures and classes. So you could click on the location, the temple, and you can see a list of lectures, and you could listen to a few of them. It won't have everything, but it'll have a few. The main thing is I'm so impressed with how Prabhupada has traveled. So I want people to see that. I get exhausted just driving 2 hours to Hillsborough. I can't imagine traveling all over the world, but Prabhupada wanted us to engage our natural tendencies in Krishna's service, and that is something that I can do to do for him.
Can you repeat the name that you mentioned? What would it be on a website or?
Yes, it's not available to the public yet.
Okay.
But it will be web-based, and once I have a few years done, I'll be happy to share the link with you, and then you can share it with others.
Sure. I'm looking forward to that. I have 2 young children, and I'm sure, this would be an exciting way of, getting to know Srila Prabhupada, both for myself and my children and for the generations that are coming up.
Yes.
So that will be very, very, very valuable. And, when you were speaking about Bir Krishna Maharaj, I have had the good fortune of hearing from him a couple of times, thanks to a good friend of mine. And so the next time I visit Hillsborough, I'll know what to look for on the temple grounds. I visited once, but I did not know about the history. Now I know, and so it'll be even more meaningful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So I think we just had a comment coming in. Shama Mohini Dasi says Hare Krishna. And Sita Thakurani says Hare Krishna. I feel very happy hearing from these senior devotees.
that's sweet.
Thank you both for your comment. Uh, I think a natural progression, as you were speaking, a thought that came up was it's been many, many years, close to 50 years, 47, 50 years since Srila Prabhupada departed. And I was wondering if you could share, how has your relationship with Srila Prabhupada deepened over these years since his departure from the world?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about was, well, let me just start over. When Prabhupada left his body in 1977, I was only 20 years old. Okay. And I had never been in his physical presence. I'd always hoped that someday I'd be able to meet him in person. And when he died, when he left his body, I really felt lost. The movement was still really, really young, and all of the devotees were very, very young. So last year on his disappearance day, I wrote him a letter, and I'd like to share portions of it with you today, if it's okay.
Yes,
It
please.
pretty much sums up my relationship with Srila Prabhupada and how it's changed over time. Okay. You find. When you left your body, I did not know how to process my grief. The grief not only from the loss of your physical presence on this earth, but the grief I felt from a lifetime of trauma. I did what I had always done. I swallowed my grief. I used slokas to deny my grief and bury my feelings ever deeper. Being the neophyte that I am, my grief popped out and revealed itself in ways that were often inappropriate and self-destructive. Despite your coming here to deliver us from impersonalism, we denied our own humanity. We acted more renounced than our level of spiritual advancement allowed. It was a false renunciation, and it led to much pain in our young movement, the movement you sacrificed so much to create. I want to say that times have changed. Some of my God brothers and sisters saw what was happening, and as a service to you, worked to create programs like Karuna Care, Vaishnava's Care, Child Protective Services, and Empathic Communication. These programs help this community of Vaishnavas. They help ISKCON. Allowing myself to process my trauma and grief, recognizing and understanding my feelings, and learning to stop faking and pretending to be more advanced than I am. Being authentic, these things have brought me closer to you and my God brothers and sisters. Now, when I think of you, I can smile and take joy. When I read your books, I feel you close to me. I can see you and my God brothers and sisters in this glorious community of Vaishnavas. Now, on this anniversary of your disappearance, I feel not pain, but joy. And I want to thank you for coming into my life and for the association and love of all the devotees who call ISKCON home. So, read Prabhupada's books, listen to his words, follow and apply his teachings, and if we do these things, he'll always be with us. So that's the lesson that I have. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've spoken about things that are often not spoken of in devotee circles, grief and trauma and dealing with them in a holistic way. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah. You're very welcome.
Yeah.
I think it's important. A lot of times people are afraid to reveal their minds because they're afraid they're going to be judged, or thought lesser than. Often when people are experienced, I remember when my father died and I was in the temple, I kept telling myself, well, he's not this body. And the devotees almost didn't even acknowledge that I had lost my father. And it was like, well, he's probably in a better place. Oh, we know those things. We know the philosophy. I mean, we have our faith, but that doesn't mean that we don't hurt. It doesn't mean that we don't grieve for somebody's loss. And one of the things I like about Karuna Care and Vaishnava's care is they acknowledge that. And they have programs in place, little short 6-week classes that cost next to nothing that you can take that help you to understand that. And I know when I took the course on trauma, addiction, and grief, that helped me so much because I was like, oh my God, that's why I'm having all these issues, because there was so much trauma that I had experienced in my life that I never dealt with. I just sort of, pushed it down. And that once I actually dealt with it and came to terms with it, I didn't have those issues anymore. It's like this weight was lifted off of my shoulders. And now I could, better serve Srila Prabhupada and have a healthier relationship with the Vaishnavas. It used to be that when everything started doing good, I was so used to not having anything good in my life that when things went well for me, it scared the hell out of me because I didn't know when it would be ripped away. So instead of letting someone else take it away, I'd sabotage myself. So I'd be the one that's in control over that feeling instead of waiting for somebody else to inflict it on me. So unhealthy, But it took me a long time to realize, hey, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be this way, And I see a lot of times devotees, in temples, they're having difficulty, they're having problems, and it's probably due to some trauma or some grief or something, some emotional difficulty that they're going through. And instead of, someone taking the time to talk to them, it's like, oh, that's just so-and-so, or, oh, they're doing this again, or, oh, they're always depressed, or, we should have compassion for the other Vaishnavas. We should have compassion for the other devotees. Do what we can to bring them closer to Srila Prabhupada and to Krishna, not to push them away. But anyway, these programs that are established now within ISKCON, they're priceless. And I hope people take advantage of them.
As you were speaking, I was remembering, this Jiva Daya Krishna Nam Sarva Dharma Sar. So all of these, as you're speaking, Karuna Care, Vaishnava Care, these are all acts of compassion for Vaishnavas and all of us. So thank you for bringing that up. And I guess my gratitude to those devotees who are serving in those capacities as well and training us.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about, your service in the past and, how you're engaged currently as well. So looking to the future, do you believe it is important for the next generation devotees who are not Srila Prabhupada's disciples to develop a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada? If yes, how can they do that? And that would be my next question for you.
Yes, it's important. Not only is it important, I think it's one of the most important things in the world. Okay. Those who had the opportunity to be in Prabhupada's physical presence, or to actually receive letters from him, they were extremely fortunate. And I think that interaction should be treasured. And I love the fact that they share it, but it's not necessary. And my own experience is testament to that. I mean, I'm initiated by Srila Prabhupada, but like the next generation and the generations after that, I've never had that personal I've never been in his physical presence. Okay. So, I feel like there are hundreds of Prabhupada disciples in a situation like mine, and we can all be an example for future generations. So even though I've never been in his physical presence, I feel really close to Srila Prabhupada, and I have full faith that he's with me. And despite any hardship over the years, I've never lost that faith. Okay. Srila Prabhupada, he took the time to explain to us, especially when he was closer to leaving this body, the difference between Vani and Vapu. Okay. So Vani means the words, and Vapu means the physical body. So which is more important, the Vani or the Vapu? Okay. The material body, it's going to be finished. One day, we're all going to die. It's going to be gone. But if we keep to the Vani, to the words of our spiritual master, then our faith will progress and we'll be on solid ground. Okay. Srila Prabhupada, I mean, I don't know how many times he saw his own spiritual master, but it wasn't very many. I think he said 3 times. And he never lived in an ashram, you know. But he held the words of his spiritual master in his heart. They meant everything to him. And he was always thinking of ways to fulfill the mission of his spiritual master. When you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you can feel him talking to you. You can see him in your god brothers and your god sisters, in their children. You can see Prabhupada in the community of Vaishnavas. And Srila Prabhupada's ability to teach us, it didn't end with his death. We all have free, I mean, if you ever go online, what's it called? The database. Oh my God, what a treasure. You know, we didn't have all this when the movement was young, you know. But now, I mean, you can go on the database and you have access not only to his books, but his lectures, his writings, everything. And, you know, if you just go there, you can build a connection to Srila Prabhupada by studying and applying the philosophy. You know, and if we want this movement, if we really want ISKCON to continue and grow for the next 10,000 years, we have to keep Srila Prabhupada in the center. Analogies aren't perfect. And you can take an analogy and you can find fault in it in so many different ways. But one of the things I think of is the example of Jesus Christ. You know, Jesus Christ, he came here to teach people how to love and serve God. And now, thousands of years later, I mean, how many people were actually present when he was on this earth? Not that, I mean, how many people actually got to interact with Jesus Christ? Not that many. But how important is he today in the lives of so many people?
True.
And you know, he's present because they're remembering his words or the words that his disciples said that he said. Okay. So it's like we have Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada translated all of these books for us. Srila Prabhupada also came here to teach people how to love and serve Krishna, or how to love and serve God. Okay. So we just have to remember that. And if we keep him in the center, the movement will continue to grow. Sometimes I think people don't, you know, I mean, I hope that everybody wants to keep Prabhupada in the center. I think we have to. It's the only way really to keep this movement alive. So yes, to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are coming in the future generations, yes, it is very important for them to keep Prabhupada in the center. And they can have a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada.
And devotees like you are a living testament to that. Even though you have never met Srila Prabhupada personally, even once, you are so deeply connected to him. And that is only through his books and teachings, Vani. And rightfully you said, like, you know, we have videos of Srila Prabhupada, we have audio and books, and, you know, we have devotees like you who are sharing about him. So how rich is our life? Wow.
It really is. We just have to be willing to take advantage of it. It's like I've got all these books sitting here on the shelf, and if I don't open them up, they're useless. You know. So we really have to take the time to open up the books, you know, and to absorb our minds, you know, in the teachings within those books. And it's like, I think the thing that helps me develop my connection with Srila Prabhupada is in the purports. If I just read the verses, it's nice. And sometimes I like just reading the verses because I can get the flow of things. Okay. But by going back and reading the purports, then I really understand what it meant, you know. And Prabhupada helps me to put things in context and to really get a deeper understanding. And, you know, and so that's what we want, you know. We don't want to be very superficial, but we want to have a deep understanding. I'm not one of those devotees who can memorize a lot of slokas, you know, and don't ask me to recite slokas. It's not going to happen, you know, no matter how many times I've read it. When I was at work, my boss used to laugh because I'm looking at maps of the county all day. I'm looking at all the streets and I'm looking at all this stuff every day. But if you ask me where something is, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look it up, you know. I mean, my mind just doesn't work that way,
Mm.
but I know where the information is, and I
Mm.
know how to look it up,
Mm.
and I take advantage of that. So I think I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry for that.
No, but I think your point is taken that Krishna, we don't have to necessarily have everything memorized, but it's the mood that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew.
Um, I think you've already spoken about Srila Prabhupada's books, but I just wanted to get a little deeper into get a deeper sense about. Okay, before I ask my next question, I just want to read a couple of comments. Shyama Mohini Dasi says, "Yes, take the time to open the books and connect with Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for this important reminder."
Okay.
She also shared that true caring is important. When you're reading your offering to Srila Prabhupada on his disappearance day,
Yeah.
that comment came up at that time. Um, what are some of the things that you are grateful to Srila Prabhupada for?
I'm grateful for a lot of things.
Mm.
A whole lot of things. I think one of the main things I'm thankful for is that he actually got on the boat and came to the United States.
Mm.
I mean, he was, I think, 65. In 1965, he would have been 69 years old.
Mm.
I can't imagine coming to a strange country, with no money, and just a suitcase and a box of books. I can't even begin to imagine that. But I'm so grateful that he did that he came here. I'm really thankful for him creating this International Society of Krishna Consciousness, which has been my home for the last almost 50 years.
Mm.
Um, he traveled constantly to lecture and to provide guidance, to his disciples. I mean, if you look at how many times he circled the globe, the stories vary, anywhere from 10 times to 14 to 16 times. As I produce my map project, we'll find out how many times
Yeah.
he circled the globe. Okay.
Yeah.
But let's say that he did it at least 12 times. Can you
Mm.
imagine the strain that put on his body?
Mm.
But he did that out of love, for everyone, out of his love and his compassion. And I'm thankful to him for that. I'm also thankful for the fact that while the basic tenets of our philosophy don't change,
Mm.
he introduced us to the concept of time, place, and circumstance.
Mm.
His expectations for householders were much different from his expectations for sannyasis.
Mm.
Okay. And the advice that he gave to his disciples was geared towards the person he was interacting with. Okay.
Mm.
So when we read some of his letters, especially some of his letters, we have to put them in context. What he said to one devotee doesn't apply to all devotees. It may, then again, it may not. And I was thinking of one thing. I was reading a letter this morning, and there was a devotee who really enjoyed music and playing his guitar.
Mm.
And he thought that maybe playing his guitar was Maya, and that he should give up the guitar and learn how to play I think it's pronounced the tambura,
Mm.
that would be more spiritual. Okay.
Mm.
And Srila Prabhupada said, no, it's
Mm.
okay. You can play your guitar. He said, don't make this complicated. Just play for Krishna. Play your guitar for Krishna.
Mm.
So it's this concept of using whatever we have and whatever talents we have to utilize those in Krishna's service and to always remember Krishna. So I'm thankful for that, for him giving us that understanding. And most of all, I think I'm thankful to Srila Prabhupada for introducing us to the chanting of the holy names.
Mm.
Because when I hear of all the other yoga processes, there's no way I could do it. There's no way. And even with the chanting of the holy names, it's easy to chant 16 rounds a day. It's very difficult to chant 16 rounds where you're fully actually concentrating and focusing on those holy names.
Mm.
And that as you're chanting, you're begging Krishna and his energy to engage you in his service.
Mm.
But for helping us, for just the fact that he took the time to introduce us to the chanting, for that I'm extremely thankful. So I already talked about his books and how thankful I am for his books and for his extensive purports. And but I think another thing that I'm really thankful for is he was such a compassionate soul,
Mm.
who led by example. And I'm really, really thankful that he gave me his shelter, because I was floundering in this world. I really was. And now finally I have direction, you know.
Mm.
And I'm just really thankful that he created ISKCON and the Association of Devotees. Um, it's like now I know what the purpose of life is. You know, I know what my goal is. It
Mm.
may take me a while to obtain it, but
Mm.
still I know what my goal is, you know. And I know that Krishna is the embodiment of compassion, and that he wants me to turn towards him and come back home, back to Godhead. And I know that Prabhupada is giving me all the tools I need to accomplish that. I just have to utilize them, keep utilizing them. So I'm not much of a talker, but those are some of the things I'm very thankful to Srila Prabhupada for. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. That was very moving. One thing that I'm hearing from you again and again is seeing, what Srila Prabhupada has done, or seeing what Krishna, the system that he's created, be it karma, right? Everything, all of those are acts of love.
Yeah.
And to receive it that way,
Yes.
and then, to put Srila Prabhupada and Krishna front and center in our lives.
We
And,
have to. I
yeah.
mean, we have to, And it's like, even, if you're, I don't know, I look at some of the householders and I see how they are with their children, like in New Goloka,
Mm.
I mean, they are teaching their children about Krishna consciousness. They're teaching their children about love of God, They're engaging their children in devotional service, and not in an artificial way. I mean, through games, through play, through reading storybooks, from reading Krishna book. And I was at I snuck into, there's this big hall in New Goloka, and with a stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I snuck into it the other day, and the Gurukula children were in there on the stage dancing, learning to dance.
Mm.
And they're learning to dance for Krishna, And it's sort of like the dancing and the singing and the playing and the reading storybooks. It's all there. It's not like you have to not do it.
Mm.
But Krishna becomes the center of that. You're doing it for Krishna. You're
Mm.
doing it in ways that remind you of Krishna.
Mm.
It's like here when I'm out there working in the garden, I'm thinking, I'm chanting in my mind, or I'm thinking, oh, I want to grow this nicely so that I can offer it to Krishna. So I'm engaging what comes natural to me. It's not artificial. I mean, it's natural for me. Because it's natural for me, it's easy for me to remember Krishna while I'm doing it.
Mm.
And it's the same thing I have with this GIS software. I could use that for material purposes, or I could use it, to help me to gain, to develop my love for God, for Krishna, and to remember Srila Prabhupada, So when I was at work, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm mapping the county, I'm adding addresses, I'm looking, where should we put the new EMS center? How many people can be served by this center? And, and answering questions for the county manager that have a spatial component to them.
Mm.
And I'm like, so I think, well, God, how is this serving Krishna?
Mm.
And and to this day, it's still, even though Prabhupada says, do your work, but do it for Krishna. I had a hard time. I would donate some of the money I earned to Krishna,
Mm.
but I had a hard time seeing how that was actually. But now that I'm retired, and I can use that same software to map all of the original temples, the first, the temples that were created when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet.
Mm.
And then I can use it to map Srila Prabhupada's travels throughout the world, and link that, link all those sites to some of his lectures, to some of his morning walks. Now I could see, oh, wow, now I'm using it for Krishna service. Now it's easy for me to see that I'm using this for Krishna service. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I can't wait to be able to share it with other devotees, so they can see this and just see how special he was. I mean, like I said earlier, I get exhausted driving 2 hours to Hillsborough. Can you imagine traveling around the world at his age?
Yeah.
And while he's traveling, translating the books, giving classes and lectures, writing letters, counseling his devotees at such an advanced age. I mean, he was a pretty, very, very special soul, very special soul.
Indeed.
And we are so fortunate that we've been able to come in contact with him. And that we still are through his books. So I'll be quiet now.
So many thoughts are coming to my mind. I was thinking, one of the top 10 favorite questions that comes up are like often asked questions would be, how to view our occupation as a service to Krishna, and you answered it today. So I think we're almost at the end of our session today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I was a little hesitant because when I first start, I get a little, nervous. And I'm afraid that I'll just draw a blank. And I'd hate to be sitting here in front of everybody and just be like, I can't think of anything to say. But I want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's meant a lot to me. It really has. And I really appreciate it.
We are very grateful, for devotees like you who come on the show and on this live webcast and share your experiences, your memories of Srila Prabhupada. We can't, for us, it is faith strengthening. And imagine this is there for future generations as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing this, taking your time and speaking with us. Please accept my humble obeisances again. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Her Grace Karunapurnasakti Devidasi ki jai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.